This water wheel drives the felting mechanism inside. Felting apparently is the pounding of wool in a mixture of warm water with sulfuric something or other and urine and soap, I think, that somehow breaks down that wool and makes it, I think, softer, but I'm not sure about that part. Big surprise how this works. This shaft is turned by the water wheel, and those pegs, if you will, these things right here, would lift these big blocks of wood up, and then they would release them when this wheel went farther and that cog went farther, and they'd fall down here and smash into that mixture of wool that was being felted. And then, after you had beat the hell out of it there, you would put it in here. This was water running from that chute that goes above the stream. It puts in a little bit of water, and here it keeps it hot, and this is where that mixture of fluid might be. What we've seen before is built into the ground outside, a conical hole surrounded by wood that served that same kind of function, although I think it had an ability to slosh around the feather wide chute. I'm guessing was designed to allow water to be brought from a higher elevation in above that water wheel, send water into that pot that we saw, the conical pot, but maybe also, although it doesn't look like it, provide some additional power to the water wheel. There's a door right here, so by lifting up this door, you could let water fall in on top of the wheel so that it had a double impact, a double bit of power. Power from the water wheel going underneath, the water flowing underneath, and then more water being dumped on top, I guess. I hadn't noticed that innovation before, and I'm not even sure I'm correct. But it's certainly something to think about. Now we'll explore these two buildings, this small one first, and then this larger one. So notice again we have this rounded ceiling, so you could dump this entire roof if it caught on fire and preserve what was inside. Now this granary not only had stuff stored up here and probably above, but underneath is a cellar. Now this doesn't look like it was designed to do what I've described, but that's what this initial design is for. They just haven't followed through on this reconstruction, I guess. Now this house is furnished with the furniture it had up until the point in time it was moved. Notice this, again for storing grain or other devices inside the house. And that's a pretty nice piece of furniture, which you can well imagine. Flour, wheat, and so forth. Here's the pantry. Notice it's a little bit different design in that this center portion has the pantry here. Here we can see the chimney for the smoke. So what's interesting to realize is that this furniture has been in this house from the get-go, and it was used until the house was no longer used. I wonder if they had rugs and so forth on the floor. And you can be pretty confident that that bench also served as a storage cabinet. I wonder if the mattresses looked like that, heaped up with straw perhaps? Here again you see how the placement of this machinery on the downside of a hill, on the bottom of a hill, or grade provides a means for running that water into that upper portion. Again, as I say, I think it's the first time I've seen this. I'd have to go back and look at my earlier videos. And this was for a sawmill. Notice it's a pretty wide wheel, massive shaft. Here must be a flywheel, although it looks like these serve some other functions. Yes, they do. They're geared. Okay, so here's a gear, a huge wooden gear. How often did you have to dink around with replacing individual gears? Although it probably didn't take too long. And they were probably made out of the hardest wood you could find. But it occurred to me to wonder how the design of the saw itself, the blade itself, had to be such as to accommodate the modest speed, I would think, that water would power this mill at. This looks like it's designed so that the end of the shaft is thicker, but it also looks like it's been bent over time. So you wonder if the tremendous weight and forces involved were such that it did that to this heavy piece of iron. I'm now behind this beautiful church. Here we can look up inside the tower. This lower part is new wood, but the upper part isn't. That last shot seemed a little strange. It was, because I had to lie on the floor and shoot up through those little holes. So the services are over and we now can go in, I guess. Here, of course, we're at the back of the church, or the front, however you want to describe where the altar is, but actually it's right there that the iconostasis would be. And it's back there where the ritual goes on. I think the log work would have been very challenging in this area here in particular. So here we can see inside. This probably would be the baby section here. Now this we can see is a very rough version of the church. These are the real timbers that make up the intern side and the outside. Here the camera can do what no mortal man could do in the early days, and that was to go behind what would be the iconostasis where I'm standing and see this innards. And you certainly could never see it when the priests were doing their thing. But just like we attach great significance to small totems all over the world in all cultures, you can imagine the priest that worked in this portion considered that to be one of the fine holy relics of all time. So whether this was ever embellished more than it is now, I have no way of knowing. But certainly it gives us a chance to see the raw structure of such a church. And those edges up there would be no slouch of a creation. To get those curves would be, I would think, a master's achievement. My guess is that it's quite possible that what we're looking at has been added from various sources just to give this place some religious character. We can get an idea of the simplicity of the artwork, if you will. Icons in their own right, depending upon what implements they're carrying, one can identify them. Mary, Jesus on the cross, Mary to the right, probably John to the left. And by the various instruments these people are identified, perhaps. How many depictions of the Last Supper have there been? We'll come back in a moment and look really closely at this. I'm just going to pan slowly to the left, to the right rather, for those who may have an interest in these individual stories. And here to the left. The size slabs that were used, and these were all hand trimmed flat. So a monumental effort in itself. But then for God, Here we get a pretty perspective of the roof lines and the beautiful curves and shapes and flows that you get from the use of those shingles. It's interesting how we often just look at, like the spectacular picture I have of Jackson Hole that I show to people when I'm traveling, that we ignore and don't take the time to look at something like this and just kind of relish, if you will, and explore mentally the beauty of these curves, the beauty of these connection of faces, different colors, different textures. A beauty of their own at this scale. I'm guessing that what this is either a town and or a vast tourist complex or a resort destination or a combination of all these, including sites for individual residences. But it also seems to be a park where it's very pretty, as you can see, with benches to sit on, nice walkways like I'm on, or a combination of, as you can see, it's very beautiful park-like. And we'll wander up where those folks are and come back down. I've seen what I want to see, but I also have to make sure I see what can be seen that might be of interest. It has an old feeling about it. My sense is that these just define places to stay, like pensions, hotels, and so forth, but I could be wrong. Over there, a display of something. It was beautifully park-like. So if you just wanted a place to come and spend a genteel couple of days, going to restaurants, staying in a nice hotel, and walking these lovely grounds, probably sufficient. This would be a lovely place to seek such a quiet, relaxing refuge. It reminds me of the kind of park-like area that the nobility would commandeer for themselves. Huge tracts just for themselves. And here a large cross bridge, pedestrian bridge, seemingly to just replace or complement that older one there. I don't know if it's been the rain or the time of year, but very few people here. Perhaps that bridge connects with more pensions, etc. up there. Here are these man-made dams in this man-made water course. Create the lovely sound of falling water. Oh, this is interesting, a huge swimming pool complex. Oh, here's a rather large, what you might call it, is worked his way out in the middle of the street, which is not a really good plan. Here my guess is that this takes us up into a relatively unused top of the mountain to some place called Magura, and that may be a symbol for a hiking trail. And there's that symbol again, perhaps, and that might be the trail, but I'm going to pass on walking up through that muddy slop today. My guess is that these two houses may be older, wealthier homes that now have been converted to pensions, bed and breakfast sort of a little sense of something in the last 20 years inspired some construction, but also a sense that this area has been around for quite some time as a resort kind of an area. Whether this was a church or just a wealthy home, I don't know. But there's a park-like stateliness, or a stately park-likeness to this whole complex, which rings of a long history of refuge, if you will. Here an older A-frame that kind of speaks to what I was saying. On the other hand, too many of these Stalinist-like looking buildings, these cold and cement buildings, whether Stalin built them, I don't know. But yet, ensconced in this park. That, I'm guessing, is the back of the Astoria. But I'm going to continue down this way and loop back up towards that in search of a restaurant before I go back to town. Here are a couple of Easter Island type monuments and a Oriental arched bridge in a park-like setting, so I think I'll find the route over here that goes down there and find. I couldn't get in the park from up above, so I'm down below and we'll walk through it here. It's a pretty little park, actually. Kind of counterbalances that ugly modern hotel behind me. God, these are ugly monoliths in this setting. This ugly thing probably connects those two ugly structures and surrounds this building here, which once was pretty. Boy damned, it's an offshoot. All of this junk is an offshoot of this beautiful hotel. What a mockery. Love to know the story behind it. They probably bring the tourists here in their buses, making them think what an ooh-ah lovely place it is. And then they can drag their baggage back to the ugly part.
To jest restauracja, ten jest samostatnie hotel, tu się jeździła i jedno się.
This is the morning school bus, and these are the kids from all the villages along the road to Svidnik. And right in front of me, I believe, is the superintendent of the school system or something along that line, because everybody says hello to her and shows great deference. Okay, from the right there, gentleman, I showed him a picture of a church, and he says, oh, he gave me directions and walked out to the corner of his house and pointed me down this street, and there I think is where that is. So now I'm looking for house number either 134 or 137. Depends on how you write the numbers. Katerina said to go to this number. I can't tell whether that's a 3, but I think 4, but I think it's 37. Using all my artifices, I was not able to get any pictures on the inside. Here a bell tower of some sort. Apparently they had a theft at one of the churches. And, that put many places on their guard on the assumption that if you couldn't take a picture, you couldn't steal anything. That, of course, is absurd, but it's their church. And now they've installed security systems in all of them. And the lady that takes care of them lives right next door. But it's their church and they have a right to protect it any way they want. probably get some information off the internet on the specific church, but it looks from here as though the earliest date was 1742. Probably restorations in 46, 57, and again 1996, 2006. Maybe even something in 2007 happened. But as I pan around, you can imagine how it might have been a couple of centuries ago, and this was a very small community, and clustered around the church probably were all of the old homes and so forth. And now there are a number of small churches here, in a bigger community, of course. Here's just another view. I'm just wandering now and around. So I've got about an hour to kill, I think, before the bus goes back to Svidnik. But this is still a little town with plots of vegetable gardens on many of the yards, as you can see. People stroll about in their daily business. This property here having its own barn still. Here, this property has a nice backyard with its own little greenhouse and a good-sized barn, probably the remnant of some more ambitious farming past. Some new construction. Interesting how long firewood is cut at. I noticed this in Bardejov also. Almost 3 feet, if not 4 foot in length. Here's the resident stork. Some early morning pruning. And you can see that these poles are installed and designed just for that bird. And I've seen these all over the world. They're relatively tiny compared to what I've seen before. They're about 2 inches long and maybe 3/8 of an inch max in width. Hello. Добрый день.
Kostol nie idete?
American?
No, kostol. Kostol. Veľký kostol.
Oh, church?
No,
Ah, see over there?
no, no.
Ah, yes, yes.
Bol?
Yeah.
Kostol tu tiež.
Ah, see. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Thank you. Thanks.
Kamerujete.
Here they are perched on a housetop roof. Here a nicely carved light post advertising this pension. Here, a newer church having an entryway added to my left behind that work truck. There in the distance, the church across from my bus stop. There's a total of 5 birds, 2 on the nest and 3 flying about. This one that's flying seems to be making the same noise. And this is a long pedestrian road that I came to from the bus stop. I've got an hour and a half before my bus goes back to Bardejov, so I'm going to wander around a little bit. There's a continuation of it with a kind of a clever diagonal through this part of little parklet, if you will. It may also include this bike path, but this curvy line invites you into this little park. Ah, here's a water feature. This tree is interesting because it has blossoms on it that remind you of the fields of safflower oil plant, if that's how you say it. Here, with all due respect, some Soviet-looking statues. What they really are, I don't know, but certainly has to do with revolution and war. The soldier with his arms protecting the child. The frieze indicating various tools of trades, I think, or just maybe lifestyle. Yeah, this lifestyle. Or various industries. So that building may be the town hall, and this is the fountain and park that surrounds it. So this is the main drag that I took to get to Ladamarov, or whatever it is, that last church I looked at. I'm just wandering the street here, just looking for color, if you will. But I do recall seeing a kind of an interesting church down here, so I'm hoping I run across it again. I don't know what the word means in Slovakian, but I sure do know what it means in English. And this might well be a hotel, I can't tell. These apartment buildings look quite nice, actually. I mean, in good condition. Whether they're brand new or not, I can't tell. But that one's not, and on the left in it looks pretty nice. Particularly the ground's much better looking than the compound, if you will, up on top of the hill above me in Bardejov. Even this one, while having lots of laundry displays, still looks in neater condition. I wonder if that's just a dynamic of medium-sized towns versus a little bit larger ones. So here's the church I wanted to take a look at with its tower. It's a new modern design, but it's interesting because it has so much of the past in it. At least that's my interpretation. It could be very, very old. I ordered an ice cream. I thought it was going to be a small one, but she thought I was pointing to the big one, which was on the other side of it. So I ended up getting this larger amount, and I don't think she made me pay the full amount. She just took what was in my hand. So this is much more ice cream than I had planned on, but sometimes you have to suffer these trials when you're traveling. Now notice the cross here. You got two bars on top, and then at 90-degree angles and quite a bit below proportionately is the third one. So this represents one of those three kinds of churches. I'll have to research that so I can lock it down in my mind. And this part appears to be a brass, and I don't know what this basic material is. Okay, having found my church, I'm going to go down here, cross the street, and try to get back in a couple of blocks and work my way towards those mountains and the main road, where I will then turn left to get to my bus stop, hopefully in time. But if not, there's another one an hour later. Another church. Notice the use of domes here, and also notice the cross. But notice there are two crosses here. Well, three, but two kinds. The three horizontals. Actually, there's four. On the two to the right, there's a very tiny one. You can see it in the blue sky between the cloud. And the one on top of the big dome are the three crossbars. And then here, it's two crossbars, but more like a plus sign rather than a cross, where the crossbar is high up on the vertical. One of the pleasures and benefits of just roaming around with serendipity towards whatever catches your fancy are the things you see. Who next to a church would think you'd discover a pile of tanks? Okay, coming upon this scene is surreal. And the real addition to the surreality is that big plain. Because the big battle called Dukla Pass was fought not too far from here, not too far at all. These tanks and so forth, I'm sure, are something that was been brought here from there, since all kinds of these tanks and other implements apparently were left strewn around the battlefield. And if you're interested, it's spelled D-U-K-L-A. And it's just outside of Svidnik, where I am right now, that the battle took place. And those two insignias, that one there and the star, probably indicate the two different sides, and I'm not clear what it was, although I think I'm not clear. And that may be over there their military museum. This is some kind of a troop carrier. And notice the good condition of these. Even the tires look good compared to the one in Chisinau, Moldova. That pretty much defines the two countries in my mind. It looks abandoned, although it was a very pretty design, but it's not abandoned. And our heroes don't know before they die that we revered and appreciated them a great deal. The farthest end of this pedestrian area crosses this river on this bridge, and still on the same side as the pedestrian roadway is this walkway path. And this area here, which in the future can be as elegantly developed as the one that I encountered in Spain, in the city whose name I can't remember, I think starts with a B. Continue further up, which I'm not. It looks like there's a park up there, plus those pretty hills that people could hike in if they wished.